What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 51 of Value Town, a talk show and podcast where we talk about anything and everything Hearthstone each and every week. I'm ChanManV, and I'm joined today by three great players. We've got Sjow, Firebat, and Chakki joining the show today. What's up, guys? Oh, so we can't hear you guys. Hold on, give me a second.
I think we can.
Oh, you guys there?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Sorry. Yeah.
I think none of us knew who was going first. But...
Yeah.
Got it. So we've been watching the BlizzCon as we've been setting up here, and definitely some great matches so far. But I figured we would start off by talking a little bit about events. BlizzCon. While it's going on, we might as well just start off by talking about it. Top 16 going on this week. They're going to get through, I think they're going to battle it out, double elimination, and then we're going to have top 8 basically going to BlizzCon next week. So right now, I think Life Coach and Krennic are playing. Tice played earlier. Pretty interesting match there. What'd you guys think of that first one?
About what was expected.
You expected Patron Warrior?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Well, knowing he brought Warrior, I expected Patron Warrior. Before the classes were submitted, I didn't expect it that much, but he had a kind of anti-aggro lineup.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't really face much aggro, but I don't know. I would definitely favor Tice over No Tomorrow, and kind of showed in 3-0.
Yeah, it was definitely a beating there.
Yeah.
I mean, the Tice has just been so consistent throughout and just been doing so good for the last few months that it's definitely expected going up against someone that probably isn't too popular in the scene right now. It is beating him down. Yeah,
so let me show the actual deck lineups here.
Okay.
Real quick here. All right. Yeah, so we can kind of see what the layout is. There's a lot of druids, not very surprising there, but there's a lot of paladin, mage, hunter, rogue, and even a few priests, and even some shaman distributed around here. So I think that's a little bit of a surprise, shaman. Sjow, what do you think about shaman right now?
It's like before. Before TDT, I expected it to be better because they actually got a lot of cards, but overload is such a bad mechanic, so you cannot play overload cards basically. So they only basically got one card, and it's pretty much not enough to play a mid-range shaman. You could still play aggressive shaman and still be successful, I guess, but there's better aggro decks nowadays than that type of deck, and there's less hand locks, so you cannot really target those kind of decks with it anymore. So I wouldn't say shaman is any good.
So no telling what kind of shaman. You guys have any predictions on?
Ping Ho always brings mid-range shaman to every tournament, so I expect we're going to see him with the mid-range shaman. And there's some argument to mid-range shaman making a little bit of sense just due to the popularity of warrior and people expecting, well, maybe Patron Warrior got nerfed, so people just switch to Control Warrior, which is obviously not the greatest line of thinking, but maybe that's where they're going with it. And there was a ton of handlock for both NA and EU in the regional qualifiers, and shaman mid-range and aggro form does great against handlock, but unfortunately for the shaman players, most of the handlocks sort of faded out a little bit when the win rate of handlock at the qualifiers was something abysmal. I think it was below 40%, right? So not very many people stuck with it.
Yeah, Ping Ho just kind of brings shaman no matter what.
Yeah.
He's done that for a year now. At the qualifiers, he had some weird mech mid-range hybrid. It looked like he was playing mech shaman with fire elementals, and he just top decked Alakir to win, and I'm kind of okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know what he's gonna bring, but
actually, I'm really curious as to what Jab's gonna be bringing to this lineup, because his mage was pretty interesting last. Just the last BlizzCon, right, where he qualified. I wonder if you think he's gonna be bringing some similar wrinkles in his mage deck?
I definitely think he'll have just the tempo mage he's been running for a while now.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think he really likes that. It's performed well for him. I think he's gonna have a standard hunter. I think really the only question is if he's gonna bring aggro druid or his standard druid.
Yeah, that is a huge question coming out because like aggro druid's been so consistent lately for a lot of players on ladder, but then at the same time, its big matchup is against paladin, and we don't see that many paladins here. So like the people that brought aggro druid might get a little bit punished for it.
Yeah, what's the thing?
I think he likes mid range a lot as well, so I would say it's pretty much the same lineup. Like he did well with it, so he's sticking with his what he knows.
So with the paladin, I know later on the show we're gonna be talking about some decks, but with the paladin, obviously the secret paladin is super popular in ladder. But is that what you think people are gonna be taking here, or do you think it's gonna be more of a mid range to maybe even counter secret a bit?
Well, all 4 of the Chinese players that qualified all used mid-range paladin in the qualifiers, and a few of them had like this weird kind of like token paladin where they use like Silverhand Legion.
Yeah.
They had
Yeah,
fencing
that's right.
coaches, like some of them put in
Knuckles.
Leper Gnome.
Yeah.
Like those guys are on something else because their paladin lists are just wonky. But I would expect to see more of that than secret paladin from them. From the other regions, I think it's probably gonna be secret paladin, but I think I wouldn't be surprised to see more mid range than secret.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like no one from NA and EU really brought paladin. We got like one paladin with Nyria. So like, I guess that could be like the only representation of secret paladin, which would be really weird for the BlizzCon World Championship to
I
have like the
know.
most dominating deck on all of ladder right now, just to be not represented. But so many people are trying to next level and trying to like meta their opponents, and they're like, well, everyone's gonna bring secret paladins, let's bring the counters to it with like aggro druid and whatever. And then people like Tice are taking it a step further, and they're gonna be like, well, people are trying to speed up their decks to beat secrets paladin, so then let's build super control decks to beat the speed up decks. And then it's just a whole circle of things.
Yeah, I'm on the same line of thinking. The Chinese players are probably mid range, and if the European or NA players would bring it, it would be the aggro one or the secret one.
All right.
Yeah.
So predictions for each group. What do you guys think? Top 2 from each group. I mean, Tice is probably a safe bet right now. He only needs one more win, right, from Group A.
Well, the Tice versus Jab match is going to be interesting. Tice versus No, I actually think No's lineup on paper might be favored because it looks like No's going to be having like mid-range Paladin and then like Handlock and Standard Druid, which could possibly, if he has enough heals and like gets the Lothab timing and whatever in the Paladin, he could beat out the Freeze Mage and 3-0 that, or he can just do exceptional work against the Patron Warrior, which can come up kind of gimmicky. And the Priest can really get farmed by Handlock, and then it's a 50-50 against the Druid. So I think that could be really close with Tice. And then Tice against Jab is another one that could be really close if he happens to have the mid-range Druid. But if he has like the aggro Druid, then like Tice all the way because he can lock down Jab's aggro Druid. But if he has a mid-range Hunter, mid-range Druid, and then the greedy sort of Tempo Mage with the actual like high end with the 5/5 that gives you a Paladin card, it could be a little tricky for Tice to actually knock out Jab and No. So I don't know if Tice is actually... I think he's my number 2 pick for that group.
Wow. Okay.
Well, I think it's safe to say he's very favored to make it out at least.
Yeah, sure.
Since he's already up a game on the other ones. Contrarily, I think No Tomorrow is pretty much a huge underdog now.
Yeah.
His lineup seemed to basically fall into like the 3 decks I think everybody's sort of countering.
Yeah.
Like when Firebat talks about like how everybody tries to go a step above, it's like he kind of didn't. And that might hurt him. So I would take Tice, and I think I'd take Jab out of this group.
Yeah, me as well.
I would say Tice. Like he has the Champions aura now. He's kind of like, I would say he's top 3 now. Like there's only like a few people who have the Champions aura right now, and Tice he recently got it. So it's Firebat, Colento, and Tice, I would say, right now. Strifegrid used to have it, but not anymore. And these are like, just having that Champions aura, you gain so much like edge. I feel like he's probably going into this very confident as well. So Tice for sure. And I don't know, it's depends on... I'm not sure about the No guy. I never heard of him, so I couldn't really say who would be the second one, but I know Yab, he's pretty good, so I would just go with Yab, I guess, as second player.
I like this champions aura thing, man. But no, I know what you mean. Like when you have the confidence that Tice is probably running on right now with just the amount of success he's had. It's been a long time since somebody's had that kind of run. Even finishing second, just at the last thing, it's nobody would be surprised for him to actually get through, which he's already got one win here. All right, Group B now. So we're seeing Life Coach and Krinish playing right now, but any other analysis on these decks that they're running and possibilities of getting through?
Well, I like Life Coach and I like Kranich. Unfortunately, they're playing against each other. So one of them is going to fall down to kind of like the losers bracket. But, I mean, player by player, I'd have to take those two out of this group. I mean, they just, like, overall, they've shown the most results of any of these players. Like, Zoro's kind of more unknown in the Chinese scene and, like, obviously unknown to kind of the Western scene. And coming into this, I do think, like, China is the weakest region. So I don't expect really any of them to get out of groups. And if they do, I don't think Zoro's going to be the one.
So why do you think it's the weakest region? Because I've heard multiple things. Reynad actually was on here a couple weeks ago saying that the Chinese server might actually be the strongest server.
Yeah, I think I've heard like from Reynad before. Basically, the Chinese server, like on some decks, has kind of been ahead of the meta, like Aggro Paladin. In regards to that, I mean, being ahead can kind of be like, sure, maybe this Paladin brew that they've made is actually, like, so good and we're going to be on it 2 months from now, but being ahead's not necessarily an advantage if it's not, like, countering what other regions are doing. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we saw last match, his decks didn't really line up well at all. No Tomorrows didn't. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that doesn't really speak to the other 3 Chinese players, but just in terms of, like, results at international events, I mean, the only thing China's really won was WCA last year. Every other time, Chinese and Tiddler won DreamHack, but that was more of an individual accomplishment. I think Tiddler's really good. Nobody can really dispute that. But when it comes like regions clashing, like the China versus EU, China versus NA, the non-China sides won basically every time.
Every time.
Like you can say like RNG or like they got the short end of the stick, like. But when it happens consistently, it's like, yeah, somebody has to be the weakest region. Nobody wants to say it, but I mean, I think it's China.
Yeah, how much?
Those China versus something, like China versus other region events, are generally like 3 or 4 tournaments all mixed up into one. Because like when I went to it, it was like one tournament one day there was like 12 games, and then a tournament the next day there was 12 games, then another tournament the next day there was 12 games, and they all had different prize pools, and NA just won every time. So it's like... Well, it's pretty consistent.
How much of it do you think is game planning and maybe just the NA folks and Europeans just prepare better, where the Asian or the Chinese players just come with what they do just all the time? Does it have something to do with that?
I think that's kind of like a player-by-player basis. Like, you've got some Hearthstone players that don't, like, they stick with what they know all the time. They just try and practice that. Yeah. And then you have players, I think, like, Purple's a really good example of somebody, like, going into a tournament, he can play literally anything. Like, he's going to practice, try and find the mathematically best stuff. Whereas, like, Pinpingho is, like, the exact opposite. Like, he is going to always bring Shaman. He's going to try and find the best Shaman. And it's like, that sounds crazy to someone like Life Coach who's like, no, like, we're not bringing Shaman.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Group C, guys. What do you think?
Group C. Definitely Osaka out of the gate. Yeah. He's been doing very well. Like, if you've ever seen Osaka play, he makes, like, very, very limited amount of mistakes. So definitely kudos to him for that. And
I don't know Love at all. You guys know much about Love?
I don't know Love at all.
I don't know him much either.
Just looking at, like, what decks have been chosen, though, like, Warlock is traditionally extremely weak against Rogue. Even, like, the Handlock form now, I believe, is weak against Rogue. Mm-hmm. And then the Zoo form, I think, is less than 50-50 against Rogue. So, like, I don't like the Warlock choice from Love. But at the same time, looking at the other Asian representative, the Warrior choice looks really strong here with 2 Rogues in the pool that he's going up against.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and Osaka is probably bringing Freeze Mage. That's like a free win if you match up there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and the Rogue's another free win for the Warrior as well, basically. So
Yeah.
then he's just got down to the Warrior. He's still got to figure out how to get his Paladin out. Paladin, I guess, beats Warrior, and then he's got Hunter, which can kind of squeak a win out sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
So
does
I'm
Paladin beat Warrior? Because it could be Patron.
It could be Patron, yeah.
Yeah.
And he's friends with Zixo, so
In fact, yeah, I'd say
Yeah, I'd say it's probably
more
Patron.
likely it's Patron. He already like knows kind of the mechanics of the deck. He played it really well when it was like the #1 deck.
yeah.
And Sixo's like, I mean, when I first saw that Patron thing, I was like, okay, Sixo's just winning on ladder and like a season that doesn't matter. He's beating up on scrubs, but he won a tournament with it. Like, he's been doing well against actual players with it. Tice just won with it. I'm like, maybe this is a real deck.
Yeah, one of the things when Zixo won that tournament, though, I was like casting that tournament, and every time, like, it was a last year of standing tournament, so your opponent got to pick which class they wanted to queue into you next. So he'd win with Patron, and then they'd always pick Handlock to queue into it, and Handlock does terrible against the new
does.
Patron. Like,
Yeah.
it's like druids with tons of big game hunters, basically, because you're throwing out curve minions like Piloted Shredder and whatnot, and then you're being able to just execute their big threats and hit them in the face. So the new Patron really, really good against Handlock, and just people weren't aware of that. So that was
I wouldn't agree with that.
Oh,
It's-
wow, okay.
I think it's mostly because Handlocks nowadays run 1 Hellfire and 1 Shadow Flame, so they don't run 2 Hellfires nowadays. So if you run 2 Hellfires, like, the only way you win is pretty much like YOLO, and he doesn't have Molten, right? And if they know about it, you would just keep Molten, right? And a Hellfire, and then you have every answer you need against the Patron.
Executes pretty good against Handlock, and so is Piloted Shredder and Grom. So they have a lot of tools. They deal a lot of damage. So I definitely still favor the Patron, even if you do keep the Molten.
Yeah, I think the main thing is it's just like closer now.
It's definitely closer for sure.
Yeah.
And already
It's
before,
definitely-
it was close to 50-50.
Yeah,
Especially
it's not like
The highest levels, yeah.
it's not very intuitive to think like Piloted Shredder really like changes a matchup that much, because the way Handlock used to lose was you got Charged Frothing Berserkered, so when that got removed, naturally people are like, okay, how do you lose now? But I mean, Gramash is still quite a lot of damage, and when you're still putting damage on the table, like going into that turn, basically like Firebat was saying, you just play a Shredder, you play a Lothab, like they have to
They're almost
remove
dead.
that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, Boom too, right? I mean, there's
Yeah.
all those typical threats you see at the
The
end.
Shredder does a lot of damage, and it is a pain to get rid of for the Handlock
Yeah.
player.
Yeah, that's true.
But
Okay, close things out. Group D. D looks like a pretty tough one.
purple all the way, man.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think I definitely favor Purple like as the best player in this group. I'm a little like shaky that he chose Rogue. Same with
Yeah.
Osaka. But I trust they know what they're doing. I just know I've like overthought things before and brought Rogue, and I've regretted it literally every time.
Yeah.
So
Rogue seems so good on paper.
it
Like,
does.
it seems, and like I know Purple's really overconfident with his Rogue because he's a Rogue player, and like with every matchup where it's like 50-50 with Rogue, if you talk to a Rogue player, they're like, oh yeah, 70-30 me all the way. So
Exactly.
Right.
people get
Well-
really overconfident with Rogue really easily.
Yeah, I think the reason for that is like everybody kind of ignores bad draws and like writes them off. They're like, okay, I didn't draw prep or like backstab, you know, it was a terrible draw. But it's like Rogue is more prone to those than like any other deck, and you have to include that. Like when you think about the deck, you have to be like, okay, you know, what's the holistic win rate? Not just when I get a decent draw, can I outplay my opponent?
Yeah, yeah. Sjow, you like Rogue at all or no?
I never liked Rogue, but it looks
don't
like
see you play much.
purple is favorite here because at least if you match up against Nyria or Sjow, because he can 3-0 the Paladins easily, I think, with this lineup. This is probably aggro Druid, and the mage is probably Freeze Mage.
There's
Yeah.
there's
So-
two shaman in this group too.
No, this is a weird group.
Yeah.
But,
To say the
Like-
least.
I think Nyria is favorite here, though. Like, as long as he dodges purple, pretty much. Like,
Yeah.
I think Nyria is the better player.
In the last tournament I saw Nyria play in, he actually had the mid-range Paladin. So we might not even see Sigurd's Paladin from him.
Did Nyria bring Mage? Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
he's probably
well,
got freeze mage.
Everyone
yeah.
knows that. What's that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you can even know, and I still think like Nyria plays Freeze Mage really well. Everybody knows that, but
Mhm.
that's definitely going to help him. The fact that Freeze Mage like suddenly became a much better pick going into this tournament.
Yeah.
I think a lot of players were really like scared of Freeze Mage though. Like it seemed like one of the best decks, so might end up being countered a little bit. But I don't think that's really a huge concern in a group with like 2 shamans and
Yeah, it
like
looks
rogue.
like everyone's lining up to really counter Paladin. Like
Yeah.
I can imagine Nyria's lineup right now is like Freeze Mage and then mid-range Paladin, which beats Secrets Paladin, and then like aggro Druid, and then purple, same sort of thing. He's got the Freeze Mage, the aggro Druid, and probably Oil Rogue, which does well against both forms of Paladin. So everyone's so scared of the Paladin, and then it's so underrepresentative, which is so funny.
It's just like you said, it's the kind of next step metagaming type of thing.
Mhm.
Normally, if you metagame twice, you can reset back to the what the original one
Yeah,
should
and that's
be,
what we
right?
have players like Jab doing. He just brought the
Yeah.
same exact thing.
Yeah.
Everyone's gonna metagame. Let's
Right.
just stick with the same thing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But
Well-
by the way, Firebat, since you're so good with Freeze Mage, what do you think about Freeze Mage versus mid-range Druids? What is the percentage there?
Okay.
Well, your win percentage is like how often your Doomsayer goes off. Basically, if Doomsayer goes off, you win. If it doesn't, you lose. So if it gets Keeper of the Grove, you lose. So whatever the percentage of that happening is, sure, because you have to
Okay.
draw the Doomsayer and the freeze, and then it has to go off, and they have to not have Keeper. So it's like a pretty narrow window. I was like, it's still like 40% maybe. I don't know.
40%. You know the player laughing?
Laughing HS, yeah.
Yeah. He only plays Freeze Mage. He has 60% versus Ladder Druids.
Yeah, that's like the ladder effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ladder
But
doesn't-
he's still
Right.
like being favored. I
Yeah,
don't think
guess,
everyone
but
would beat it.
The
Favored,
thing
right?
is, in that meta, they don't know you're playing Freeze Mage, so
Right.
they're
Right.
mulliganing
That's
to
true.
try and like deal with mad scientists and things like that, and deal with tempo and whatnot from the mage. But
That is true.
in like a tournament, once they know you're Freeze Mage, they're like full mulliganing for Keeper and just only having Wild
Yeah.
Growth and Keeper,
Yeah.
and it gets a lot harder.
That's definitely
Yeah.
much worse.
And also, people's win rates are just like inflated on ladder. I mean, this is the World Championship. You're facing much higher caliber players.
The best
so
players, yeah.
I'd say Freeze
Yeah.
Mage definitely an underdog.
Yeah, I would say so too. Like I would never lose that. It feels
Yeah.
like that. Whenever
lot
you
of
play against Freeze Mage with Druid, you never lose.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people say. A lot of people are like, "Oh, it's like 90% favored for the Druid," which I don't think is true,
No.
because like Freeze Mage definitely has its little cute ways that it can win, especially with some of the newer techs coming out for Freeze Mage with like duplicates and things like that. So there's some like duplicate Belcher plays that can happen and things like that that can really slow down a Druid.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll be playing, I think, the first matches all today, at least for each of the groups. I think there's 4 today, and then it's going to keep going. I think the Thursday, Friday, and I believe Saturday, too, there's going to be broadcasts. Again, just trying to get through this top 16 or these group phases where it's double elimination. And then we'll see 8 guys go to BlizzCon next week. I'm kind of sad for the other 8 guys, you know what I mean? Like, they officially make BlizzCon, but they don't actually get to go to BlizzCon.
Yeah.
You know,
They
that's
did
kinda
it
how
last
is.
year too.
Yeah.
You're right. It's like it's kind of worrying because last year was like 16, and then they cut to 12 for BlizzCon. Now it's 16. They cut to 8. Regionals got cut from 16 to 8. It's like less players overall are like seeing the spotlight of like the live stage because like so many people have gone to what's going on now where you're like in a studio, you know, you're being streamed.
Yeah.
It's a lot different than going onto a live stage at BlizzCon, and it's just like such a cool experience that I wish more people got to experience. Like, it's already so hard just to get to BlizzCon, but to get to the actual BlizzCon now is even harder.
Well, the crowd there, I mean, you guys seen it. It's amazing. Like, it's electric, actually, when there's plays made and the crowd just goes nuts.
The whole stage like shakes a little bit.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
definitely a crazy feeling.
So much for the tells.
At regionals, they had like the boomsticks, and so
Yeah.
you could hear those through like the noise canceling things. It was
Yeah,
crazy.
you hear people cheer. So you know when you're dead. Like they top
Yeah,
deck
no,
the
it
force of
was-
nature, and everyone's going wild, and you're just
They've
like,
worked
well, I
on
guess
that
I'm
a
dead.
lot, but Yeah, like the camera guys.
The camera guy runs in to get your facial
Yeah,
reaction as you
Oh
die.
man, that's the
You're just
worst.
like, I wonder what he topped at.
Let's get his reaction. Let's get
And
his
D2
reaction
doesn't
right
kill
now.
you, and you're like, "Wow, what's going on?"
Yeah, no, that happened to me. Like
Oh,
three
man.
camera guys rushed in, the boomstick started going, and then nothing.
Nothing.
Okay.
Oh, man. How often do you actually guys look at the crowds?
Not really at all.
Yeah, you just
Yeah.
It's
try and stare at the screen and stay focused, otherwise you get scared and nervous.
Yeah.
I feel.
Yeah. It's probably a bad idea if you start looking at the crowd during your
Yeah.
game, because that means you're not in the zone.
Yeah. I mean, Sjow, you've played multiple games, so not even, not just Hearthstone. So,
Hearthstone is different though, because like it's easy to get distracted from Hearthstone because like you have to wait for your opponent.
Mhm.
You look somewhere else and you start thinking about something else. In StarCraft, it was like, yeah, I have to. There's only one thing I can think about here.
yeah, definitely. Well, it'll be great to see, man. Can't wait to see if I guess our favorites make it through this bracket. And again, we can crown that world champion. And Firebat, you're going to be at BlizzCon, so hopefully they'll have you be handing over, at least representing the reigning champion and maybe crowning the new champion type of thing.
That would be cool.
The fact that you didn't get in because we only take top 6 was,
That's pretty triggering.
yeah.
I was upset.
That kind of sucked, but nonetheless, it'll be great to have you there, man. And Chakki, you'll be there too.
I will not actually.
Oh, okay, that's a
Don't
bummer.
really have much to do, so I'll just
Yeah.
be watching from home.
Yeah, cool, good deal. And Sjow you too, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not going too far away.
Yeah, that is a long trip for you. Okay, moving on. Let's see, more events. So Challengestone happened this past week too, and Firebat here ended up winning Challengestone, which is awesome. The event's always really unique, right? It's one of the few events that we have where deck building is really featured. For those of you not familiar with Challengestone, it's an event actually sponsored by, or Tempestorm event, where the players are not given the restrictions of what cards they can play, or they are given restrictions as to what cards they can play or whatever theme it is, and they're not told this restriction until how far in advance is it? It's like
You get about 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
so-
it depends on the which challenge zone it is. They all have different time limits depending on what the challenge was.
Basically, Crip runs it himself a few times.
Yeah, exactly.
And however long he takes, because
You
he
gotta
consider, yeah, that's about what they decide.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so there's a time restriction as to how long you have to build decks, and at the end of that, like say 20 minutes, it's whatever 3 decks you have that are completed, actually abide by the rules, and you get to play. So, what they did here is they did like a time lapse in the videos of you guys building your decks and kind of picking through all kinds of classes, and even just you guys thinking about what to do, which is pretty cool. I think that was neat. But Firebat here with I think 3 tempo decks ended up just crushing it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I had like a controlled Druid, I guess, just because Druid had all the cards to do it with like the 5/10s and stuff. But my other 2 decks, like, I saw, well, there's no silence in the format, and there's no real removal. Like, I mean, there's very limited amounts of removal available, and then there's very limited amounts of taunt and very limited amounts of heal. So I was like, all right, let's kill some people.
Yeah, that's always the
So,
best
I mean,
way. Yeah, the restriction this time around was TGT cards, epics, and was it epics, legends, and rares, or just no epics
Just
and legends?
epics and legends.
Just epics and legends.
Yeah,
No
okay.
rares.
Yeah, so those are the only three types of cards you could use.
Yeah.
Which,
So I played like Face Hunter, but there wasn't any Face Hunter cards available because of how the format works.
Right.
So I just literally played minions that were like 1 and 2 drops and 3 drops that just because they're 1, 2, and 3 drops. Like, it didn't
3
really
mana,
matter.
3 threes.
Yeah, it didn't matter what the effect was. The fact was, though, they don't have removal for it. That's going to get in 3 damage. That's going to get me 1 step closer to just being able to use my hero power and just be Hunter and win. So
sounds like Arena a little bit, right? It's
Yeah.
just really highly aggressive meta. No, they're definitely good. Definitely cool. I think Econ finished second, right, to you in the finals.
Yeah.
And he was running all kinds of big minions.
yeah,
That
his
was-
decks were crazy.
Yeah, they were really crazy, but it was fun to watch, actually. But yeah, Challengestone 4, so another successful event. Hopefully we'll see another one soon. Next up, we're going to go into our, just our typical segment that we do each and every week, which is...
It's brawl time!
All right, so this is where we actually take a look at the Tavern Brawl that's new